Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, March 23rd, 2026. So this episode we start in Carly's kitchen. Valentine is setting the table and he has prepared Coco Vaughn. Coco Vaughn for um Carly and um she's like freaking out because it's dangerous for Valentine to be downstairs in the house because literally anyone could walk into Carly's house at any time. Um and then he's like, "Well, fine, then we won't have sex anymore." And I'll take this up to the attic and eat it there. And she's like, "No, because it's good." Like, no, and they sit down and they talk and they get to know each other a little bit better because she learns that back in the 90s, he worked as a sous chef as a cover when he was in the WSB. And while they're talking, though, someone pulls up and it's Marco, and Marco is there to tell Carly that he's going to be staying at the Metro Court because he and Marco have moved out of Windermere. Yeah. Have you spoken to Marco yet? Anyway, Laura is down at City Hall. She's working, and in comes Martin to tell her basically that he has gotten a job in Reno and he's going there and, want to make sure that she's okay. And, she, you know, tells him, that she's fine and to go because your three ex-wives aren't going to pay themselves. And when he leaves, Sidwell shows up and she finds out that the reason Martin got the job in Reno is because of Sidwell. He pulls all these strings and he is literally the puppet master of Port Charles right now. And no one seems to be the wiser, and I don't understand that. But he tells her basically to get on board, and she's like, you keep doing all of this stuff that I'm against. Like, it is a glaring indication that something nefarious is going on here. And he's like, "Oh, I'm almost finished." And she's like, "Oh, you're almost finished. So does that mean you're gonna leave?" And he's like, "No, I love it here. I'm staying here and Marco's about to start a family." Like, have you talked to Marco? But anyway, then we have Brooklyn and Tracy that they're at the hospital because Brooklyn was going to see Phoebe um in the hospital, and she lets her grandmother know her and Chase's plans to see if they could possibly become foster parents to Phoebe, until her family is located. And Tracy is like throwing out all these kind of roadblocks, like, "You sure you want to go through this hurt? How did it feel when you had to give up Bailey Lou? How did it feel when Violet went to Seattle to be with Finn?" Like, she's asking her all of these things, and she's like, "Yeah, all of that hurt. And it'll hurt for me to have to let Phoebe go, but I feel like we're the best people to care." And this, Tracy said something very smart to me because I like where Tracy's mind went, and I kind of agree with her to a certain extent. She asked her, "You and Chase have been having issues, and right when you're in the thick of the issues, you stumbled upon this child. Are you using this child to try and reconnect?" And she's not saying that, you know, Brooklyn is being sneaky or manipulative or anything like that. But when they initially got really close when they were taking care of Bailey Lou, and so she's like, "Are you trying to, subconsciously, are you trying to recreate that closeness that you all forged back then to get back on, the same page?" And Brooklyn says that's not what she's doing. And, you know, yeah, they have issues and it could have been a problem. But I also think Tracy knows what she knows. And I still think that the problem and the issue that was there is still a problem and an issue. Because even today, we see him in the episode as a beat cop, and you can see that he's not okay with being a beat cop. He feels like he should be a detective. It's just all over him. But that's not your role anymore because of the choices that you made. And I don't think that he has acknowledged that it was his wrong choices that led him to the situation where he is right now. But then we have Lucas and Britt. Lucas brings Britt her medication and she's thanking him. And she's like, I'm probably never going to work for GH again because if I come back after, ghosting them, it's not likely I want to get my job back another time. And he was like, well, I hope that you take care of yourself. And they start talking about how all of this happening may have led them to meeting the loves of their life and all of this. And they come to, like, because Britt and Lucas, they don't get along, they don't like each other for various reasons, and they kind of wrap their disdain for one another, they kind of wrap it up in a bow. And he's like, Jason's meeting here, and she's like, oh, he'll be here. She's very sure that Jason is coming for her. And then we have Nathan and Brennan. And Nathan is coming up to his sister's room and he sees Brennan there. And then they figure out that Britt is probably on the run because her clothes and everything are gone. And while he's with Brennan, he gets a call from Dante because we also have Dante and Alexis with Jason, and Danny comes out and he realizes that Dante is trying to arrest his father. And, you know, Dante convinces him, turn over his gun and to let him take him in. He's going to take him in without cuffs and everything. But then when Danny sees them, he does turn over his gun, but he has to show up for Britt, is what I'm thinking is foremost in Jason's mind. He has to show up for Britt. So he looks at Danny and sends him into the building with his grandmother, Alexis, and he tells him, I love you. And then he turns around and headbutts Dante, and Dante is dazed on the ground for like a minute. And Jason runs, and it's a good thing that he did because once Lucas leaves, Cullum shows up and he gets the vials back from Britt and he smashes them. And then Rocco makes a sound which creates a diversion for Britt to knock Cullum's gun out of his hand. And she and Cullum get in a scuffle. She hits her head and he's about to shoot her because he's like, she's more trouble than she's worth. And before he can pull the trigger, Jason comes and then they scuffle, and then Danny takes the shot. And Jason is just like stunned to see not Danny, it's Rocco. I'm sorry. Rocco takes the shot and he's stunned to see Rocco there. And this is bad for me because I know that it is going to be a whole thing with Dante, but I think that Nathan takes Rocco home to Lulu, and he talks to Lulu and tells Lulu what's going on, per the preview for tomorrow. But today was pretty good for a Monday. Let me know what you thought about today's episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Today wasn't too bad. The PCPD, slow for the PCPD. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, March 24th, 2026. So, in this episode, we start at Pier 55 with Jason and Cullum. They're fighting and struggling over the gun. And as we saw yesterday, Cullum was about to beat Jason when Rocco picks up the gun that fell to the ground and he shoots Cullum in the back. And few seconds after he shoots Cullum, Nathan comes and you know, and Jason are asking um, Rocco, did anyone see him? Did anyone know he was coming? And Nathan gets Rocco out, and then Jason turns to first, check on Britt, and then he shoots the gun to make it look like he shot the gun, like he shot Cullum, because there's no way that he is going to let Rocco go down for shooting Cullum. But anyway, then he wakes up Britt and he tells Britt to tell the police that he shot Cullum, that you saw him that she saw him shoot Cullum. And Britt is like a little disoriented, like, what? And he was like, you got to tell me. And then Dante comes and he arrests Jason. And he asks Britt, but Britt doesn't give an answer, but she doesn't dispute what is obviously happening. So Dante takes Jason down to the PCPD and he's interrogating him. But Jason is Diane's favorite client for a reason. Jason knows to not say anything until his attorney shows up, and Jason is not saying anything. Not one word is uttered. He act like he was going to say something at one point, but he doesn't, and he gives Dante nothing. And Dante is talking to him and he's like, I'm trying to give you, because you were, I'm like a father to Danny. I love him like a son. Sam, he's saying all these reasons, why he wants to help Jason. But Jason knows, don't speak without your attorney. That is the rule of thumb, because that was something that Trina did when she got arrested all those years back. Is you're a police officer's child, so I know your father has taught you this. You don't say anything to the police without an attorney present. Just don't. I don't care if you're innocent. Say nothing to the police. But anyway, so then we have Danny and Alexis. They're walking into her office because she's trying to get a copy of the warrant from the WSB that does not exist. But she's trying to get a copy of the warrant so that she can be armed with that when she goes down to the PCPD with Danny. But when they get there, there's Marco bleeding out, gasping for air. And so, Danny calls 911 and she's applying pressure. And then here comes Officer I Want to Do Too Much Chase. He's questioning her. And I understand that he's the police and he has to question her, but some of his questions are stupid. She walked in with her grandson. She don't know how he got there. All she knows, she walked in her office and the boy is down there on the ground bleeding. And so she tried to get him some help. But while she's being interrogated by, I'm not a detective, I'm a beat cop now. Danny calls Charlotte and asks Charlotte to pick him up, and then he ends up telling Charlotte that his dad told him to always go to Sunny if anything happens. And so she was like, no, we're not going to Sunny. And then she's going to, I guess, take him to see Valentine, which I don't know that is a necessarily good idea, but that's what happens. And then Carly and Valentine are talking, and Carly is basically saying that all of her choices have led Jocelyn to the point where she is now being in the WSB because she wants to try and take down Sunny, and so she doesn't trust her own judgment anymore. And Valentine was a little upset because he felt like Carly was comparing him to Jack Brennan. And then Valentine, I don't know. I mean, I never thought about it, but I hate to say it, but I'm kind of liking this Carly and Valentine situation that is going on. But anyway, he was like, he has pledged his life to helping her and protecting her. And I'm like, okay, Val, all right. I didn't know you had it in you, but it's not something that I ever thought about. But ever since he went on the run and he showed back up at her house that night when he broke out, I just felt like something was going to happen. But is this real? Can this be something sustainable? Like, after all of this is dealt with, can they make a go at it? I'm not going to hold my breath, because I also believe that her and Sonny got one more time in them. But anyway, so they are talking, and she tells him that she believes that he's going to help her through it, and not just because of the promise he made to Jason. And then we have Liz and Lucas. They're at the hospital. They're talking, and Lucas is making plans for Marco. Little does he know, Marco is severely incapacitated right now. So Cullum comes in, and he has to go into surgery to try and save Cullum, and he's on the elevator and he's calling him, and he's asking him to call because he was brought in from the pier where he had just met Britt. Well, while he's up scrubbing for surgery, Marco is brought into the hospital. And when Marco is brought into the hospital, Liz is about to send him to the OR, but Dr. Gannon says they don't have time for an OR to take him to the trauma room. So they're working on him in the trauma room. And, him and Liz are on one side of him, and they're working, and it looks to be successful. However, on the other side, my man's is bleeding out. He's not my man's because I don't even. Anyway, Marco is bleeding out on the floor on the other side, and they're not aware. And based on the synopsis for tomorrow's episode, and based on the fact that we visually saw that Marco was bleeding out, I don't think Marco is going to survive. And it's going to be sad for Lucas, but then I don't have too much sympathy because, like I've been saying all along, Lucas is stupid. Like, they got very idealistic. They're like, oh, my dad wouldn't hurt me. But yeah, even if your dad doesn't hurt you, that doesn't translate to him not hurting Lucas. And then, like Britt told Lucas yesterday, Sidwell is not the only one that you have to worry about. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. But here we are. Here we are. Lucas is upstairs in the OR trying to save Cullum, which I think will get saved. I think he will get saved, which is good for Rocco because he won't have the idea of killing someone on his conscience. But I don't think Marco is going to make it. And then we also see Britt come into the hospital, and Portia, my girl, was on today. I was so happy. I always love a surprise Portia sighting. Anyway, she comes in and she is, you know, examining Britt, and she tells her that her CT came back clean and everything. And she's like, oh, I need to speak with Lucas. She says Lucas is in surgery. She was like, I need to speak with Marco. Portia got a look on her face. She's like, what? She like, he was stabbed a couple times, and they down there working on him. So It was pretty exciting. These 2 days have been pretty exciting. Let me know what you thought about today's episode in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, March 25th, 2026. The In the words of Mike Lowry from Bad Boys, when you write a soap opera, that's how you write a soap opera. GH has been hitting on all cylinders this week, and I am proud because what have they been giving us? I don't know what it is they've been doing, but this was chef's kiss. Okay, so we start this episode back at Lulu's house, and Lulu is talking with Rocco, and she's asking him, what happened. And he finally tells her the story of how he went to go ask Britt to be his mentor. And then she got a text, and she kind of like shooed him away after she got the text. And so he followed her. And then he tells her he followed her to the docks. And then Lucas came. He didn't really hear what they sang, but they seemed friendly. And then Lucas left, and he was about to leave, but when he did, Agent Cullen came, and he was about to shoot Britt, and then they fought for the gun, and Britt got knocked out, and then, Cullen was about to shoot Britt, and Jason came, and then he ended up picking up the gun and shooting Cullen, and then Nathan came and got him out of there. And all you know is that Britt was still unconscious, but she was breathing. And Lulu tells him that she's going to take care of everything, don't worry. And then she ends up taking him to the hospital to see Liz to get his hand looked at. And I'm a little scared about that, but she tells Liz that he got a little carried away with a knife while he was helping her cook. Then we have Portia and Britt. Portia's still examining Britt, but Britt is anxious because she needs to speak with either Marco or Lucas. And, Lucas was in surgery, and Marco is not, conscious. He's basically in surgery too. And, she's getting antsy, and, Portia like, okay, I understand that you need to do what you need to do, but I need you to do what I need you to do, because you know the procedures and the protocol just like I do. And I need you to calm down. I'll go find out what I can for you, but you need to sit down and shut up. Basically, is what Portia said. And so Portia comes back, and she tells her that Cullum is still alive, and I believe she tells her, I can't remember, that that Marco didn't make it through the surgery. And, she's upset. Then her brother comes, and he's trying to question her, but Portia's like, okay, she's my patient, and I'm staying for the questioning. And if I feel like it's going too far or getting her too upset, I'm going to stop it. And then, he questions her, and she tells him basically the story. I mean, I want to say it is. I don't want to say it's a lie, because it's not really a lie. It's the truth, except that Jason didn't actually shoot Cullum. It was Rocco. But in covering for Rocco, even though she doesn't know she's covering for Rocco, like she told the right story. And she's like, okay, now I need to go see Jason. And Portia was like, you can't leave. And she was like, look, either y'all gonna take me to go see Jason, or I'm gonna go get a ride show, or I'll walk myself. And so she ends up going to the PCPD. And I'll get back to that. Meanwhile, Liz and Isaiah are still operating on Marco, but unfortunately, he lost too much blood, and they weren't able to save him, and he dies. When Lucas comes downstairs from his surgery, he briefs Brennan and tell him, Cullum is still alive, and blah blah blah. And Liz comes out and she's like, look, we need to talk. And he's like, oh, we can talk right here. And she was like, no, let's go to the break room. And he's like, no. She said, well, at least let's sit down. He's like, Liz, just like, what are you trying to say? And Liz tells him that Marco died. And he is distraught. And they go into the room where Marco is. And, he says his goodbyes to Marco. And it's very sad. I know I probably said I wasn't going to feel sad if something happened to Lucas or Marco because they were being foolish. Because I feel like once they took the medicine from the safe, they needed to be leaving town as well because they were under the illusion that no one was going to, especially Marco, under the illusion that no one was going to suspect them. But Cullum and Pascal were always going to suspect him because you had several failed attempts that they know about. So I don't know why he felt like they weren't going to put two and two together. So I felt like just like Britt and Jason were leaving town. I'm not saying they should have all left together. Definitely not. They needed to split up, but they definitely needed to be leaving town as well. But can't cry over spilled milk. Marco is gone, and it is sad. And then we have Ava. She's over there with Sidwell, and they're talking about a potential relationship. But he said he ain't gonna never be but just like one woman, and she was like she like a challenge. But then Chase comes over and Chase tells him that Marco was stabbed and asks him, is there any possible, do you know anybody who could have wanted to do this to your son? And Sidwell goes to the hospital, and Isaiah and Portia, are there to tell him that, Marco didn't make it. And Sidwell is upset. He's like, you did this. Did you do this to get back at me? And he's like, no. And Portia tries to interject. And I hope this does not put Portia in the line of danger because I'm coming through the screen. I'm telling y'all now. Like, I'm telling you now. If one hair, one curl gets disturbed, we fighting. Like, I'm just telling you now. Like, anyway. But then Alexis goes down to the PCPD and she tells them that she is Jason's lawyer. And she goes in to talk to Jason, and Jason's like, all I need you to do is to take care of Danny. And he won't tell her what's really going on either. And so before everything can get situated, the WSB comes in. Brennan comes in with the WSB to take in Jason. Do y'all think that it's possible that Brennan is taking in Jason to protect Jason? Because I think that might be the case. Because he and Jason were pretty much sharing information, and when he was talking to him, he was telling him what happened, and I think he was trying to let him know, like, look, Cullum's still alive. So I think that Brennan might be hiding Jason in the interim, which is good. But anyway, so it's like so much going on. Then, DA Turner comes and she's trying to fight, like, this is my jurisdiction, all of this, and the WSB is like, nah. And then they have to take Jason away. And so when they're taking Jason away, why I keep messing up Jason and Danny? When they're taking Jason away, Britt runs up and she's, saying, you got this all wrong, blah blah blah. And then they tell each other that they love one another. And then, then Danny comes up, and then Danny comes up and he is upset about seeing his dad being taken away. And Jason's like, remember what I told you? I love you. And, I felt so, my heart broke for Danny. But today was a great episode. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, March 26, 2026. So we start this episode with Sonny at home. He's on the phone. He's trying to locate Jason. Then Carly comes over and she's frantic because they need to locate Jason because you don't know what the WSB will do to you once you're in custody. However, I do believe since we know that um, Brennan and Jason were kind of working together prior to all of this happening. I think Brennan took him to get him out of the way, especially after he heard that um that Cullum wasn't dead. I think he went on behalf of the WSB to scoop up Jason before anything could happen to him. I honestly believe that's what's happening, especially knowing that Steve is going away for a few months and then he'll be back. I don't think that he's necessarily in WSB custody because they'll likely kill him. But I think that he's hiding him for the time being. But I don't know how that's gonna play out once he find out that Carly ain't jacking with him like that no more. But anyway, that's what I think as far as Cullum goes. But Carly is upset. And Sonny is telling him that he got somebody working on it. And Rick comes over, and Carly is no fan of Rick on any day. And so with Rick being there, she's first resistant, but because of the trust that she has with Sonny, she's like, okay, if you trust Rick, I'm gonna go with it. And then Sonny pretty much tells Rick everything. Almost, he doesn't tell him that Sidwell is holding um Dalton's murder over him and Laura. But he did tell him that he fabricated evidence of a murder, of them committing a murder, but he doesn't want to implicate Laura because that's not his decision basically to make for Laura. So Sonny got his loyalties and he gonna always stick with his loyalties, but he is also going to work with Rick, and he wants Rick to find a legal way, I guess, to kind of bring down Cullum. I mean, excuse me, to bring down Sidwell and Cullum. So yeah, they're trying to take them off guard and unawares. Anyway, Lulu and Nathan are at her house, and she tells Nathan that she knows what happened at the pier, that Rocco told him. She tells him that she took Rocco to the hospital to get his hand checked out. He was a little like frazzled by that. He was like, Liz was the only one that saw us. She thought he cut himself with a knife. It was over, which, calmed him down a bit. And then, she was, upset to learn that it's likely that Jason told Britt to implicate him in Cullum's shooting. So now Jason is in WSB custody, and he's basically taking the fall for Rocco. And Nathan's like, look, there's no way Jason wanted Rocco to go down for this. So you just gotta let it play out because you don't want to take the risk, take what he's doing and squander it. Like, just go with this. Meanwhile, Alexis and Tracy are at Alexis's house, and Tracy is being informed by Alexis of everything that transpired with Jason, and Tracy is appreciative. And then she's like, she want to take Danny home, and she's like, well, Jason said that he wanted Danny here. And they have a little bit back and forth about it, but by the time Carly shows up, they agree that um Danny is going to stay there with Alexis. And then Alexis said, Danny could deal with a little bit more structure. But Carly is like, I advise against putting him in too much of a box because it's going to be the same thing that happened with Alan and Monica with Jason. And at first, Monica gets excuse me. At first, Tracy gets a little defensive about her brother being and her sister in law being brought up, but then Carly explains what she's trying to say, and then she leaves, and Tracy tells Alexis, Carly is not wrong. You have to find balance, and that's what Carly is trying to impress upon Alexis. Anyway, so then we have Lucas and Ava. Lucas is upset, and Ava is trying to be a good aunt and console him. And he tells her that Dante wants to question him, and that he's going to go down there and tell Dante that he should look at Sidwell. However, when he goes down to the precinct, Sidwell is leaving, and Sidwell hugs him and is like, "You love my son, and I hope you will come home to Windermere tonight because that's always going to be your home." Yeah, and it's like, I believe in a way, kind of like touched on Lucas's heartstrings. But the call is definitely coming inside the house when it comes to who killed Marco. So I wish he would have kind of like said that to Dante, but he goes in and he talks to Dante, and he, basically says that things were copacetic with Sonny and Marco, and that he doesn't really think that Sonny had anything to do with it because, they haven't had any words or beef or anything. And um, you know, he doesn't know. And it's all crazy to me that everybody's first instinct is to say Sonny did something, but Sonny has been chilling. He's buying his time, and he's trying to strike at the perfect moment. So he's not making these sloppy mistakes. And like Dante said to Sidwell, Dante says that it's no way that Sonny would have attempted to kill him there, where all of his known associates are there. Diane is there, works there. Alexis works there. That's too messy for it to have been Sonny. But Sidwell is looking for anyone to blame. But you are, in fact, the reason that your son is dead. You and the company you keep. But then we have, like I said, Dante and Sidwell were at the precinct and they were talking, and he's trying to tell him to look at his look at his father and figure out where him and Jason's whereabouts were during the time that his son was killed. Mind you, during the time when Marco was killed, Jason was headbutting Dante in the head. He was literally with Dante at the time of the the stabbing. Meanwhile, Sonny was at home with Donna because they stated several times that Donna was with Sonny last night. So he was home with Donna. It didn't have nothing to do with Sonny. But of course, let's act like Sonny did it. And then Sidwell leaves the precinct and he goes over to Ava's house and he's crying and she's trying to console her. I guess Ava is the consoler these days. And then we have Britt and Jocelyn, and she's like pressing her to tell her everything. And Joss is starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And Joss is turning into a cold blooded killer, you guys. And I just want to know, what's the difference between her and Sunny, who she hates so much? Just saying. But she basically tells Britt that he's a patient in this hospital and he's unconscious, and you're a doctor in this hospital, so you have, you know, the ability to get into his room. So I think she's trying to tell her that you need to go ahead and take cull him out once and for all. But let me know what you thought about today's episode, and I'll be back to close out the week tomorrow. Bye. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, March 27th, 2026. So, this episode, we have Brooklyn and Chase. Chase is in the shower, and Brooklyn is getting ready because the social worker is supposed to meet for their interview today. And she's kind of rushing Chase along, and he's saying how he didn't really get to sleep because he just got in at 7 a.m. because of um, helping with the investigation going into Marco's stabbing. And he's like, can we reschedule? And she's like, no, we can't reschedule. We set the appointment because we said it was urgent. And so if we say that we need to reschedule, it's kind of tantamount to saying that we are too busy to parent, which she made perfect sense. But so he's like, okay, we're going to do it. And he takes a little bit longer to come downstairs, and Brooklyn is a bit anxious. And apparently, Chase knows the social worker that is interviewing them. And so they're doing the interview, and she's asking all the questions, and they're explaining themselves. And then she asks, if you'll be able to give the baby up when the time comes. And they told her that they will be, because one, they've done this before, and also because they just want to be able to provide a safe space for the baby until the baby can be reunited with the family. Yes, they are attached, but they just want to know that the baby is somewhere safe until until um the family comes for them. And I'm laughing because I just thought about what happened at the end of the episode, but I'm going to save that for the end of this. Um well, no, I'll save it after the next people I talk about. So the next people that I'm going to talk about are Wiley and Michael. So Wiley and Michael are in the kitchen, and they're talking, and they are getting ready to work on Wiley's project. And Wiley has to pick an animal, and he wants to do a spider because it's Jacinda's favorite animal. So as Michael is talking to Wiley about his project, Olivia comes into the kitchen, and she overhears, him bring up Jacinda, and how she feels about Jacinda. So anyway, he's like, can Jacinda help me with my project? And Michael's like, yeah, sure, we can. So she makes an excuse to get Wiley out of the room so that she can confront Michael about his relationship with Jacinda. And I have two things to say on that topic. One, Michael is grown and he can have whoever he wants around his children. Two, Michael has a mother, and her name, last time I checked, wasn't Olivia. Like, she just does too much sometimes. Well, in this particular instance, she was just doing way entirely too much. And I'm like, Olivia, like, girl, this is not your son. It's not your grandkid. Like, chill out. But anyway, so, her and Michael have a bit of a back and forth. And at one point, she blurts out that Jacinda is a hooker. Little does she know, Wiley overheard that. He's what, 9? He doesn't know what a hooker is. So, Chase and Brooklyn were giving the social worker a um tour around the house, and she asked to meet, other family members that will be interacting with the baby. And she's like, yeah, fine. Meanwhile, Wiley comes running into the room, and he's like, Brooklyn, what's a hooker? That cracked me up. And that's what Olivia gets, because girl, like, first of all, they always talk in the kitchen or different spaces in the house. Like they don't know like 100 people lives in the house. 100 people live in the house, and that anyone at any point can walk in on their conversation. This is like they all forget that. And that there are a lot of little ears roaming around the house as well. It's crazy to me how like they literally forget that and say anything that any kid could hear. But then we have Joss and Britt, and basically Joss is telling Britt that she needs to kill Cullum because when he wakes up, he is going to make you pay for all of this. So we have to kill him. And then Joss was like, yeah, no, maybe I shouldn't have asked you that. I should do it. And Britt's like, no, I don't want anybody else risking anything because Marco died doing something for me. I don't want anybody else to risk themselves doing anything for me. So I'm going to do it. So Britt goes in there and she's going to go inject him with something. And you know what it made me flash back to? It flashed me back to when Trina was on trial and Portia needed to issue the drugs to bring him out of to bring Oz out of his coma, and she snuck into his room to do that, which she did successfully. But it made me think about that, her going in with is almost only thing is Brit ain't start crying and talking to herself like Portia did. But anyway, she goes in, but before she can inject him, Lulu comes in and stops her. And then, she didn't get to go in and do it. And she left the room and she's talking to Lulu because Lulu's trying to get a quote from her for her article. And while she's doing that, Jocelyn goes in to do it to finish him off. But when she goes in, he wakes up. So y'all, what y'all think Jocelyn gonna do? Do you think she is going to continue with injecting him, or what's about to happen? Anyway, so then Sunny and Geo are at home, and Geo is starting to feel the effects of the Titan security around. So he asked his grandfather, what's going on. Then he asked him about, what happened with Jason. He was like, Jason always seemed like a cool guy around the Quartermains. He was like, we all have different sides to us, and they're having talks, and he's kind of concerned about his father, but he and Dante don't have a good relationship. So he's like trying to get the information from Sunny, and Sunny was like, you can go check on them yourself. You gonna have to build a bridge, which I don't necessarily agree with because I don't feel like in this case Geo is the reason that the bridge is broken. It's all Dante because Dante is an a-hole half the time. But anyway, so Sunny was like, you can go check on him yourself because you're gonna have to open the door for him. So he does go check on him, and I think Dante appreciates it. And so when Gio is about to leave, he makes up something for Gio to stay, and they start talking about Corinthos coffee, and they start chatting, and they have a nice little exchange for once because Dante can be a jerk where Gio is concerned. Sorry, not sorry. And then we have Dante and Turner. Before Gio gets there, Dante and Turner are talking about the investigation and how they're going to hold the evidence from the WSB for as long as they can until the WSB comes with the proper stuff that they need. And Turner goes over to see Sonny to question Sonny about whether he had anything to do with Marco's death. And Sonny, he didn't, so he tells her as much, and they flirt, and she plays with his dog and all of that. Meanwhile, it's getting real sticky, but nothing is happening. But let me know. This week was pretty good. For me being off, I appreciated this week because don't waste my off time with trash episodes. But let me know what you thought of this week's episodes, and I'll be back next week, and I'll do a video about that. Hey guys, before I leave you alone for the weekend, I just wanted to come back and let you know that normally, as you can tell, that I typically post my recaps for the episodes around between 4 and 5. I have been on leave generally the majority of the time that I've been doing my recaps. I went back to work last week, but I worked from home all last week, so I was still able to keep up with my normal posting schedule. However, this week I was on vacation, and then next week I will be going back to my normal hybrid schedule where I'm working from home on Monday and Friday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday I'm in the office. And so, with me being in the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I have commute and everything. So, I maybe a little bit later, probably at least by 7 p.m., I'll have the video of the recaps up, but it'll, be a little bit later in the evening before I can put the recaps up from now on because I have to do my commute, and then I may have to, depending on which soap I watch while I'm at work, I may have to watch the other by the time I get home. So that's why I said about 7 o'clock at the latest. I'll have them both posted. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up so that when my posting is a little bit different next week, you won't think I've become erratic or something. No, I'm still going to be doing my posts daily. But it's just going to look a little different because I am going back to work. And like I said, I work a hybrid schedule and I have a pretty big commute. It can be, but it can't be depending on the day and the traffic. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what's going on. I didn't want to scream anything on you. But it's nice to have your conversations and your engagement. I hope that you continue to do so as I make this transition.